Hannah, and I'm so excited to start a new series here on my channel. Disney has always been my truest passion. The one thing in this world that I have always loved more than anything. I am the biggest Disney geek. Anyone that knows me in my real life or grew up with me will tell you that. I used to put on Disney shows for my parents that would go on for hours. I would just run around and be each and every character. I used to make up Disney quizzes and make my family take them. I used to show all my friends like every Disney movie there was. From a young age, I was always really interested in learning history and facts about the company. So I thought I would start a series here where we can learn together about different parts of Disney history. Now online there are creators that make series about the movies and about the parks, but something that I feel like I don't hear a ton about are the people behind these things. There are so many people that are like lost in Disney history. And even if they aren't lost, even if we know about them, we don't really know a lot about them. Especially the women. I definitely feel like I want to know more about the women behind early Disney history. Like the women in ink and paint. They had such an important job and they worked so hard. So I'm super excited to explore some of the history of these women. I am going to be doing an episode about Mary Blair, who I have always loved from childhood, and I'm super excited for that. But to kind of start things off, I really wanted to explore Disney's 9 old men. I've always heard about the 9 old men, I've always kind of known about the 9 old men, but I've never really known the true story. So for this episode, we're just going to do a brief overview of who the 9 old men are. We're not going to really dive into specifics of each of the men. I think I'm going to break them down into having their own episodes. Next month will be Frank and Ollie, which I'm super excited for. I've always been interested in their friendship and their work together. Let's talk about Walt Disney's 9 old men. These guys worked on classics like Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, 101 Dalmatians, and Peter Pan. Peter Pan is my personal favorite Disney movie, so I'm appreciative of the work that they did. The last film that the remaining members were involved in was actually The Fox and the Hound. Raise your hand if you feel personally victimized by Fox and the Hound. I cannot watch that without crying. It used to scare me a lot. So thanks, 9 old men. These guys were at the forefront of the artistic animation movement, which is why we hear about them so much when we think about Disney history. When I went on the Walt Disney Studio tour, I definitely heard my fair share about the 9 old men. So why on earth were they called the 9 old men? Is that even a flattering nickname to have? Walt actually coined this nickname for the group, and it was a play off of President Franklin Roosevelt's nickname for his Supreme Court, and Franklin Roosevelt wasn't always happy with his Supreme Court. So the term has kind of a negative connotation, but for Walt it was a joking term of endearment, and through him calling him that, it has stuck with us all of these years. Here's something really interesting that I found out through my research. We know them as the 9 old men, but they were not one big group. They all had individual talents and abilities and aspirations, and they often didn't function as a group. Walt would have people here, there, and everywhere, and I'll get to that. Let's go through and name the 9 old men. We have Eric Larson, Frank Thomas, John Lounsbury, which I feel like I might pronounce some of these names wrong, and I feel horrible about it because these people were so important to Disney history. So John Lounsbury, Les Clark, Mark Davis, Milt Kahl, Ollie Johnston, Ward Kimball, and Wooly Reitherman. Oddly enough, these men were not the first to work with Disney, and they were trained by the veterans. People like Ub Iwerks, Norm Ferguson, and Fred Moore. Now, unlike those animators who were self-taught, the 9 old men came from some pretty prestigious art schools, and they didn't all have the intention of going into animation. Wooly and Ward both wanted to be watercolorists, and Mark was interested in animal anatomy, which is definitely an interesting fun fact. During the Depression, Walt Disney put out an ad that he was looking for animators, and that is how the 9 old men came to be. Now, like I said, they didn't always function as a group. In fact, it doesn't seem like they often did. And just naturally, when you put people together, there will be friendships, there will be rivalries, there will be competition, especially in like a high-pressure atmosphere, which I'm assuming working at Walt Disney Studios can get pretty high pressure, especially in those days. So the Incredibles director, Brad Bird, commented that every time you get Frank on the subject of Milt, and Milk on the subject of Frank, it's like 2 thoroughbreds kind of bumping each other down on the line. And Mark Davis, one of the 9 old men, said, "Sometimes I think Walt's greatest achievement was getting us all to work together without killing each other." So there you have it. The 9 old men weren't one big happy family, which I think can sometimes be assumed because they have like a cute group nickname. Some little differences between them include that Mark was never without a sketchbook and Milt never carried one. And a similarity between them is Ollie and Ward both loved railroads. Doesn't that sound like someone else we know? Not me, Walt. I feel like that made it sound like it was about me. I mean, I have nothing against railroads, but I'm not fascinated by them. Anyway, let's move on. I think we all know that Frank and Ollie became the closest of friends, but Mark and Milt, the sketchbook guys I mentioned, were also really close friends. This is an interesting one. I'm gonna have to read this because I don't want to mess it up. Ward and Frank played Dixieland Jazz in the jazz band called Firehouse 5+2, which is a great name. The duo played trombone and piano respectively, so Ward played trombone and Frank played piano, I think. The band released a total of 13 albums and received an homage at the end of Princess and the Frog. Now you know why the band Lewis joins at the end of the film is called the Firefly 5 plus Lou. Genius! I live for these Easter eggs. The only two men to leave the studio during World War II to help with war efforts in film were Frank and Wooly. That's just one example of them not functioning as a group. But they did all work on 101 Dalmatians. Wooly Reitherman directed. Mark Davis was the sole animator responsible for Cruella de Vil, that diva we all know. And the other 7 actually worked on Perdita. Now I did mention that Wooly was the director for 101 Dalmatians. Walt did move the 9 old men around, so he shifted Wooly from animating to producing and directing. He moved Les to television work, and he moved Mark to Imagineering, and I'm excited to do an episode about Mark because we have a lot in the parks to thank him for. There are a lot of things that the individual members did that I am excited to dive into more in coming episodes. Like I said, the next episode I'm going to focus on Frank and Ollie. I'm super excited to dive into their friendship, but also look at them as individuals. If you like this first episode of my new Disney series, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment with I need your help. A title for this series. I have no idea what to call it. I feel like I'm just gonna call it Disney History, and that's not very creative. We're kind of focusing on the people more than the movies and the parks and the characters. So something with Disney and people and history. Any ideas, leave them in the comments. I'm so excited about this series. I'm just excited to geek out about Disney with you guys. I'm always interested in learning more about Disney history, and this is just something fun for me to do. I'm looking at putting these episodes out the last Friday of each month. It should be pretty consistent, and I really hope you'll enjoy it as much as I will. Definitely subscribe and hit that little bell so that you don't miss upcoming episodes. I love you all. Stay beautiful, you people. Bye!